welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today in the show, we have Janet Tamaren. She is a family physician and she's the author of the book, Yankee Doctor in the Bible Belt, a memoir. And she wrote the Kevin MD article, I was thinking about retiring and COVID-19 gave me a push. Janet, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and journey to where you are today?
Okay, I went to medical school in Kentucky, so I was somewhat used to the culture there. I grew up in Cleveland and went to school in different places, but I ended up in Kentucky, and it was a little bit startling in Kentucky that there were some cultural differences. I did not know that the country could be so different. I had lived in Boston, Denver, Cleveland, and I traveled all sorts of places, and I didn't realize there was a different culture going on in the South. So I got used to that a little bit, and then I went to practice in rural Kentucky, and there was a whole other culture going on, and I wrote a memoir about it because it was such a unique experience, and I really enjoyed getting to know my patients. And I don't know if people out there are thinking about doing family medicine, especially in a small town. You really get to know people, and that was quite an experience. I really enjoyed it. And then I moved back to Denver to spend time with my grandson and children. And then I worked in urgent treatment centers for a while. And then at this primary care clinic on the west side of town in Denver, which translates into a poverty clinic where they all speak Spanish, and I needed translators for every patient. So I had a wide variety of experiences, including the rural health part, and then moving to this primary care clinic on the west side, which was again another poverty clinic, which is what I'd been dealing with in Kentucky. And this little article I wrote was about the day COVID came to town, which I think we can all relate to. I think we can all remember where we were when they told us schools were shutting down one day. The next day they said, oh, by the way, all you medical providers, go find some masks. And the next day they said, oh, and put up barriers so you're not and have enough space that you can get distance between you and your patients. And they said, and by the way, they didn't say this, but they basically did. They said, there's no testing available. There was no testing available that first week. And then we scrambled around in our little clinic and discovered there were no masks to be had anywhere. We all did a search with the health department and online and internationally, and there were no masks to be had anywhere, nothing other than the little flimsy white mask that you wear in the clinic when someone might have the flu. So I think we can all relate to that week. That was a Thursday when things were tightening up, and then it was a Friday when things really tightened down. And it really got scary because they said, we're going to close down the economy on Monday or something. So that was that's what incentivized me to write that memorable week, working at a clinic that was, it was terrifying that last day, that Friday. Oh yeah, we're closing down the country. We're closing down the schools. Everybody mask up who's working, who's seeing patients, and there were no masks. Patients, of course, continued to come into the clinic. And then one of them that I described says, I've had a cough for 3 days. I've had a high fever for 3 days. I might feel better today. Oh, by this way, this started with diarrhea for 2-3 days. Do you think it's COVID? And I'm going, I have no way of knowing. I didn't quite say it like that, but I'm thinking I have no way of knowing. It was scary, and we had no protections whatsoever. And I'm of an age well over 65, such that all that high risk business really hit home. I wanted to get that out of my system. I wrote this down because it was such a memorable week, day, month. And then I called up the guy who ran the clinic. He'd been in practice for 50 years. And the next morning, and I was about to offer my resignation because it was terrifying. And at which point he says, oh, by the way, we've decided to close the clinic because it's too scary.
Mhm.
So that was how I got to be retired.
So you wrote this story. It's titled, I Was Thinking About Retiring and COVID-19 Gave Me a Push. So that March was about 18 to 19 months ago. And of course, a lot has changed since then. Tell me about that choice now upon reflection. And if you were offered that opportunity to retire because of COVID, would you have done the same thing?
I think I had no choice. I mean, at that point in time, they were telling people my age to shelter at home. Again, there was, I don't know about the doctors who worked in well-staffed, well-supplied clinics, but even the good hospitals in town, even the very nice hospital, they still didn't have the protective equipment. So I don't know how many other doctors faced this choice of, gosh, risk my life. Maybe everyone who continued working basically accepted that choice. But those of us who were over a certain age, it was really scary because they were very clear that we were at high risk. So I think I would have done it again, given that information. The only thing that would have made it different, and that I'm sort of perseverating about right now, is if I'm fully vaccinated and if there's not a Delta coming through, I might consider going back to work. But I am fully vaccinated, but there's a Delta coming through. And I have grandchildren and they're not vaccinated, so there's risks. So right now I'm okay with being home.
Of course, you didn't get a chance to leave clinical medicine on your own terms. It was kind of forced upon you because of the pandemic. How do you feel about that?
Well, it was going to happen sometime, and I didn't know what time it was going to happen because I've enjoyed talking to patients in the clinic, and I enjoyed talking to patients trying to test out my Spanish. And the patients were kind of thrilled that I was trying. And it was always interesting. So that was kind of hard to leave behind that kind of contact and the mental stimulation. So the contact I haven't replicated, except I've been spending more time with the grandkids, which is a different kind of contact. The mental stimulation, though, I think I started, I'd been writing a book about my experiences in Kentucky, and I then spent some time finishing it up and researching. And I think this is true for all of us who've gone through medical school. There's something about it, something about medicine we like, and even when you leave it, you're still wanting to go research things. I find it very comforting to go look up the medical literature and read New England Journal of Medicine and find out what's happening and what's new. And in terms of the book I wrote, that was fun because I could use that digging into things to sort of revisit diagnoses or patient situations I'd come across maybe 10 years ago and see if anything had changed. And in terms of treatment, in terms of diagnosis, turns out a boatload of things have changed. So it was a nice opportunity to look at the new findings in genetics and in like cancer diagnosis and treatment. And it's been an extraordinary time in that regard, the last 10, 20 years, where I was busy with clinical medicine. I wasn't keeping track.
You're also the author of that book, Yankee Doctor in the Bible Belt, a memoir, and you talk about your experiences practicing in rural Kentucky. You did mention that practicing in rural Kentucky was different from a lot of the other places that you practice. Can you go into more detail about some of those differences and your experience practicing rural medicine in Kentucky?
Well, the first thing I noticed the first day I was there was people spoke an English which was a little bit foreign to me. You'd ask, how are things going? And they say, likely. I'm going, what does that mean? And I had to get used to that. I'd already gotten used to the accent. Living where I did in Lexington, Kentucky, which is not rural, I'd already acclimated to the Southern drawl or accent. So I could understand that, which was important, because when I first got to town in Lexington, I could not understand anybody. It took me a couple of weeks until I got through that barrier. So I could understand people in the rural area, but they were rural. They were talking about tractors and stuff I didn't know, and tobacco, and coon hunting. And this is one of the stories of my book. One of the first patients was a little boy who hadn't been sleeping in school. His father brought him in because he kept falling asleep at school. The teachers were upset. And the little boy explained he'd been going out coon hunting every night. And I said, "What's a coon?" So I had to get through those kinds of barriers. There was also in Kentucky, beside the rural, my ignorance of farming and of farm animals and stuff like that. There were also differences. They were isolated. They were kind of proud of it, that they may have never left the boundaries of their little town. This was a point of pride. And the families were real tight. They all lived close to each other, or next door, or close. Which was different for me because I had spent some time in Denver, and Denver is a city where a lot of people move to find a new life. Young people move here, and it's an adventure thing. They don't do that in Kentucky. They stay put. Mm-hmm. And probably the corollary of that is that they don't really trust outsiders. And they're they just don't really trust outsiders. And they had some cruel things to say about New York City as being the playground of the devil, the devil's playground. And there was also the difference in terms of they believed in creationism and in interpreting the Bible as quite literal, and that was the Southern Baptist fundamentalism, which infiltrated every aspect of their lives. And that was a little hard for me because I came from a background of molecular biology and genetics, and they were building a museum to honor creationism, which is, between you and me, a source of laughter for the rest of the world. When I traveled to Europe and I mentioned, or they told me about a museum in Kentucky honoring creationism or showing dinosaurs and people coexisting in their dioramas, overseas they were laughing at us. So that was a bit of a divide for me. And also they had a belief, which I think pertains to how badly they're dealing with COVID, which is, if God loves you and you pray, then God will protect you. And maybe you don't need vaccines. I think that's sort of feeding into this, that if you're a good person and God loves you and prayer is very important, that God will protect you. Whereas in my experience, my feeling is God gives us scientists and gives us wisdom and allows us to do medicine and design vaccines.
We're talking to Janet Tamaren. She's a family physician. She's the author of Yankee Doctor in the Bible Belt, a memoir. She's also the author of the Kevin MD article, "I Was Thinking About Retiring and COVID-19 Gave Me a Push." So Janet, talking again about the rural population, especially in Kentucky, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that patient population faces today?
Well, what I compiled in my book, because I asked myself that question, what did I call it? The scourges of the South, the 3 scourges of the South. This is before COVID came to town. I think right now they're really having a rough time. And they are famous for the rate of diabetes type 2. Many of my patients had diabetes. I'm not sure if Kentucky is at the top of the list of states in terms of diabetes frequency, but if not, they're very close. They were way up there in terms of emphysema, COPD, because they are a tobacco producing state, and less so now. Mm-hmm. The economy is changing, but everyone heavy smoking everywhere. People would tell me they started when they were 6. One guy told me he started up behind the barn when he was 6, working on his father's tobacco farm. And he was like 45 when I knew him, and he looked around 65, 70, and he was dying of emphysema. No surprise there, because 2 packs a day wasn't uncommon. Mm-hmm. Alcoholism. I had several patients with alcoholism. I considered that one of the top 3 just because I saw so many patients with it. Otherwise, people only came. This is, I think, part of a rural health clinic. People came when they were sick.
Mm-hmm.
They generally, working at an urgent treatment center later on, people would come because they had a runny nose. They wanted you. I'm kind of exaggerating, but they would come with a cold and think you could fix it. They were a little, or they, this is not kind what I'm about to say. There was one lady who came because she's going on a cruise to Mexico and she wanted medicines in case she got sick. She wanted an antibiotic in case she got sick ahead of time. And she wasn't talking about Montezuma's revenge. She wanted to have coverage for a cold, a cough, whatever. And the fact that she thought we could do that, I don't know, it was just coming to the doctor when you need to. The folk in Kentucky did that. Maybe they waited too long. They'd been sick for a week or two, but still, they usually showed up with a bona fide complaint, unless they were trying to get drugs out of you.
And my final question, what's your take-home message that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
Well, in terms of the retirement article, I found it's been 1.5 years now, so I just wanted to share with people that if they're nervous about life after doctoring, there is a life. And writing a memoir is always fun. It gives you a chance to revisit patients that you may not have seen for a while. It also gives you an excuse to call them up and ask them how they're doing. Mm-hmm. So that's not a bad venue for transitioning if other people need to transition.
Janet, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Okay, well, thank you.